Welcome back to Williamsville South, Game 4 of 5 of the section of the New York State Public High School Athletic Association Football Far West Regionals. Francis Beck, Tim Chiefa, Paul Catrona. Pre-game coverage of the Class B Far West Regional between Sections 5's Monroe and Health Sciences out of Section 6. And we have two teams right now who are built very similarly, even though they've had very different seasons.
Well, I mean, this is the okay, so I have never seen a defensive statistic stand out like this. The only thing I can remember was the kid from Bennett 2 years ago when he had like 8 pick sixes. Remember the one it's at UB?
Yeah, Jaden Lewis. Yep.
Jaden Lewis had like 12 interceptions, 8 for touchdowns, and I thought that was a typo. So we mentioned this yesterday. We don't know a ton about the teams from Rochester. We're openly honest about that. So we learn about them as we go through the week and we study. You pull up Monroe, and they win their first game. I think it was 54-6, I believe. Nobody has scored on them since. 0. And it wasn't a typo. I had someone call Rochester. I mean, I went and asked 3 kids in the parking lot. I didn't believe it.
The boys getting off the bus, right?
That's exactly what it was. Yeah, I had to know. I didn't believe it. I really didn't. I've never seen a stat like that. Like, I mean, I've heard of starting units not getting scored on, but when you put you assume that second and third stringers had to play at some point.
And we've confirmed that also. And they have not gotten scored on either.
And you would assume after maybe the third or fourth game, it became like a thing for them. You got to assume that, right? Nobody's scoring on it, you know what I mean? And, oh, my God, I've never heard of that before. That is wild, wild. Not to mention, they also have 13 touchdowns from defense and special teams. I looked that up. They have 6 fumble returns, 3 interception returns, and 4 punt returns. So a total of 13 touchdowns not on offense. So
they are the 85 Bears
right?
defense on steroids.
Yeah, right. Well,
if you will.
with possibly a version of the greatest show on turf on offense.
Yeah,
yes.
not to mention
they can put up points, right? So how does Health Science even
I don't know.
get out there? Well, you know what I was thinking was Health Science, 400 yards a game.
Yeah.
Speed on top of speed on top of speed.
Ball control. I mean, hold on to the ball. They have a triple threat. I mean, obviously, the leading is the Connolly Cup finalist Antoine Caesar, 1,582 yards, 7 touchdowns. He was fantastic. Probably the player of the weekend last weekend. I would say. If you're watching on TV on streaming it, you'll probably see it was red helmet. It's not a different helmet. I looked at it last week.
It's actually
the paint looks like it's chipping away. So that means he takes a lot of hits. And
I love that even better.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't want my helmet repainted.
Right.
I like to show them
yes.
I am going to put this thing in their belly and I'm going to keep moving forward.
But so they have Antoine Caesar, they have Kevon Pitts, Tyron Hughes, all crazy stats. And then the senior quarterback Shamir Banks, 1,300 yards, 19 touchdowns, only 3 interceptions. But the quarterback talk for this game has to be Monroe. Kian, I think that's how you say it. I apologize if it's wrong. Kian Moses, some more stats here. 1,706 yards, 34 touchdowns. That's a lot of touchdowns. And when teams can't score on you, that's a real lot of touchdowns.
That's a lot of touchdowns.
Yeah, so we don't know. We watch stats, we watch some highlights, and we read a lot this week. So is Monroe this special of a team? Is their division a little bit weaker? Is it a little bit of both? We know Health Science is really good. We know that. We've watched Health Science.
And we know they played in a really good division as well.
Yeah, and their one loss was a last-second touchdown against Will South, and they have been on a tear ever since then. I don't have the stats in front of me, but I think last week during the pregame we said since that loss it was like 178-30 they outscored their opponent. So it's almost like they and I said I don't believe in a good loss, but
held their opponents to 10 points or less in 5 of their last 6 games. So that probably starts with that Will South game.
Yes,
if I'm doing the math right in my head.
Yeah.
And so and I think
right after.
Right
after.
right after.
And you know what I love about that though, Francis, is they took the loss and they knew they can do better.
Yeah.
And they didn't get into a funk. What they said was, we're going to pull together as a team, and they coalesced into a just a great team.
You know, one of the things I think is I am a huge Ty Parker fan. I think he is one of the not just best coaches, he's one of the best leaders in this area. His basketball teams and his football teams are competitive every single year. They put out Division I players, they put out college players. And I think he took advantage of that loss. I don't know if you guys ever seen the documentary of the Dream Team. Chuck Daly almost had them lose on purpose to the college kids. And it was almost like, okay, see, now you can lose. And then now they had to listen to him. And I think there's maybe a little bit of that into this where I think Ty Parker took advantage of, okay, see, you can lose. So now you got to listen to me, and now you got to do the little things.
For
right?
instance, I'm sorry. So, see, you actually can lose. So a little different than what I was thinking.
Right.
So he's proven to them they are not as great as they think they are.
You can't just win on talent alone. You have to do all the little things. And since that game, because they're one of the funnest games of the year was the very first game of the year against Starpoint, but Health Science probably didn't love that game because Starpoint didn't have a great year, and to be that close back and forth, it was like 56-40. I mean, I don't know.
A lot of turnovers that night, right?
Yeah, and it was like 100 points scored. So I don't think Health Science got off to a great start with that, and then we'll saw a few weeks later. But since then, and then including last week, another beating a Pioneer team for the second time. Pioneer was really good. You know, Pioneers was a good football team. And to beat them again on a back-and-forth game, you know, shows, you know, how talented they are. And, you know, we talked about, I mean, probably the second fastest team in our area. I would think it's Bennett than them, you know, as far as speed. And
they might argue that. They might think
sure,
they are, right? But they're both good.
Whatever.
You're right.
And it's very hard to practice
that
against that. You know, it's very hard to practice against that. Now, this team that they're playing, you might be able to mirror it, right? But, you know, a lot of teams do not have that kind of speed to emulate in a practice setting. So little things like, especially like, you know, basic tackling. You know, you can't let these kids get to the corner. Can't let them get to the edge. You got to stay disciplined, and you got to wrap up, and you got to gang tackle. And it's just going to come down to little things. But I am really excited for this game. You asked me yesterday, you know, which one I'm excited for, and obviously the Bennett McQuaid is the big game. But because of the statistics of this Monroe team, and I know the talent that Health Science has and the tear that they've been on, I'm just really excited to see it.
Yeah, we're very, very happy to be here today. I love that Health Science team.
Yeah.
You know, I've said before, I have a special place for city teams going out and winning championships. I think a lot of times the city teams don't quite have as much funding, but they have some great players, and they're getting notoriety.
Well, you mentioned it. Health Sciences literally practices in a park with no lines right now, and they play their games at Buff State, but they don't have really a home field. They've played some games at Johnny B. Wiley, but I don't think they practice on that turf.
So again, that's even more evident what a good job Ty Parker has done. That's not easy. That's not an easy situation. You know, you take things for granted like a practice field and all that stuff, right?
And you know, in Monroe, inner city Rochester team.
Yeah.
So the city of Rochester team, and I just love to know that these young men are getting opportunities now to show their wear. I always talk about sports like it was a sales presentation. They get to show their wares. Well, guess what? Now they're in the biggest game of their lives,
Yep.
Far West Regional. Both teams, fast, big, strong. And I loved how you talked about the fundamentals of football. I'm constantly talking to my friends about, you know, Coach Marv Levy would say, you know, winning is simple, but it's not easy.
Right.
Well, how do you stop a kid like Caesar? You better set the edge really strong because you got to turn that kid inside between the tackles and don't let him get on the outside.
Yep.
Same thing goes for Health Science. First thing I'm hoping to see is two great defensive lines that'll just set that edge and then push up the field. And then let's see who can sell their wares the best today.
Yeah, and not only that, when you are playing someone with quarterback numbers like that, you got to get pressure on him. You cannot just let him sit back and pick you apart. So that means your cornerbacks have to be able to cover one-on-one. You have to, because you want to send an extra guy to put some pressure.
You want that fifth man rushing a lot.
Yes, exactly. So that means your athletes on the corners have to be able to stay with their guys, which is not an easy task. It's much harder on a corner than it is a receiver. So it's a lot of looking in the mirror and saying, I can't let that guy in front of me beat me. Not the guy in the mirror, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really gonna. And again, I said it a little while ago. I am so impressed with Ty Parker, because I've watched a lot of his games on the football field, a lot on the basketball court, and the style that he coaches is, it's like he's disciplined, but he also allows his kids to have fun.
A lot of freedom. Yep.
And it's both. And I think that is the way you have to be. I mean, you know, I was a Bobby Knight fan back in the day, and that day and age is kind of gone. You can't be that way anymore, and you have to. You know, it's a different age of kids, and he is the future of the coaches, and him and Coach McDuffie and you know, Coach Bartozak earlier. These are really good coaches.
So to that point, you know, we were talking about the Pioneer game, health science, last week, and anybody who's heard me talk about Pioneer, I absolutely love that team. Fundamentally sound. They are just, man, I call them a machine. They went out there and they just executed. And then they meet somebody just like themselves, and they had a whale of a game. Health Science was able to overcome a deficit, went ahead, won that game. So today, Monroe's got
Health Science
unbelievable stats.
I believe they made it to. I didn't have it in the notes there. Oh, they did.
Yes.
They had. I think they won one of the. I know one year they went to the state semifinals, but they didn't make it past there.
Okay.
But yeah, so they've won this game before, and they've been in this game before.
Okay.
But it's been a couple years since.
Okay.
Yeah, I think 2019. 221.
So
2021.
B would have been Lackawanna last year.
B was Lackawanna. Well, Health was in A last year.
Health was in A. Okay.
And they,
that was
I think
Jamestown.
they just made the playoffs last. They were, they had a down year last year because that was their first year in A.
Okay.
You know, I should shout out these guys, or at least let's talk about this. This Health defense has to deal with Messiah Hampton, Landon McKnight, Amari Colin. Each of them have 400 yards receiving on the year. And we were talking to Markel Slaughter, who is with the Democratic Chronicle out in Rochester. He says, like, basically what they do, they have so many good guys on the outside, they just figure out which ones in one-on-one coverage and throw to them. So that's a big challenge for the secondary.
And you know what's crazy about that, Francis, is if you look at the schedule in other games, they've been blowing out everybody, which generally means you aren't throwing a lot in the second half. So for the most part, right, if you're up, you know, usually you're running the ball because you want the clock to run. So I would think because there's not many close games or you're not down, those stats are even more impressive for those receivers and quarterbacks.
True.
You know, because it's probably majority. I'm guessing majority first 3 quarters.
Because they're taking advantage of the time they're on the field.
Yep.
And
I bet you there's very little fourth quarter yardage and touchdowns. I don't know that. It's a guess, but I bet you there's very little fourth quarter ones.
Well, we know one thing. We were talking. You know, Francis, I'm sorry, I forgot the gentleman's name from the Democrat.
Markel.
Yep. And so talking with Markel, and I asked him, did they make a lot of defensive substitutions? Because I think, Tim, your point earlier was.
Did they keep everybody in?
Did they keep everybody in the whole game? And no, they played their backups when the game was, when the game was out of reach or whatever, whenever the coach felt it was safe to do so. Their second team came in and didn't give up the
I just
point.
looked. The backup quarterback played in 6 games. So, I mean, 6 games to put your – I mean – That probably means,
good.
Yeah, that means they're taking their 90% of the games are taking out their starting quarterback. So I don't know, but we really might be watching a very special team right in a few minutes.
I think we're watching 2 special teams.
Yeah, for sure. I'm really excited for this one.
And it's a Rochester-Buffalo thing.
Yeah.
2-1. 2-1, Section 6 so far.
I think one player that's catching my eye right now, I think could be an X Factor, Tyrone Hughes. Remember, he started the year at McKinley. Actually, past 2 years as McKinley. He was their lead guy there, and he transferred over to Health Sciences. And we were talking before the season, McKinley had a chance to be here in Class A. At least they, not necessarily maybe the favorite, but they were in the conversation to make the stadium. He comes over to Health. He takes on a little bit of a lesser role, but he's bigger on defense, and he's been coming in, I think, more in the fourth quarter is kind of that opposite to Caesar to wear the defense down. You wonder if he's a bigger X factor in this one.
Well, you know, I was just looking at his stats when you were talking about it. On offense, 7.2 yards a carry. That's a great guy to have come in after you've kind of softened up the other team a little bit, right? Now you got somebody bigger and also fast and also talented. That's how deep that health science team really is. So,
and a beast on defense also.
And a beast on defense. Yep. You have a great defensive line.
They're going to need them today, that's for sure. You got to be disciplined on defense, and I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but I mean, last game was such a close game that either game could have won because there was very little mistakes. Leroy, they made a couple mistakes at the end. Jumped off sides on 4th and 1, and then not using their timeouts properly. It's a little mistakes. It could come down to that again. When you have such two talented teams, it could come down to mistakes.
Wouldn't that be a great afternoon so far? We saw
1 for 1, right?
You know, Salamanca make some great plays at the end, win the game in the final seconds.
I just want to see. I want to see Health Science score and see how Monroe reacts. Because the only time they do a kickoff is the first play or this halftime. You know what I mean? So it's the only time they've had kickoffs the whole year. So it's little things like that. You know, it's very obvious that Monroe has had from a scoring win-loss standpoint, they've had no adversity. I don't know if they've had throughout the team, but from a scoring standpoint, zero adversity. Every game's been a blowout essentially. So I like to see how they react if Health Science can put some points on the board, especially early.
Yeah, especially, and we talked about it, Health Sciences is a battle-tested team. Not only did they have Pioneer, who gave them 2 great games, they lost to Will South. They had South Park in their division, and you can make an argument in Section 6 here. Will South and South Park plays an A. They might have been playoff teams, but because the way things worked out, they were just short of it. Actually, South Park made it as an 8th seed, I should say, but, they were on the outside looking in sort of deal. You put them up another class, that's they could be easily postseason teams. That just shows you the division that they were in, and you had South Park beat Lackawanna, who we thought was the #1 team in Class B, and then when things shook out, it's Health Sciences. But that just shows you the strength of schedule.
There was Maryville. I mean, it was loaded. The Bees were loaded. Pioneer, Maryville. Lackawanna was undefeated 90% of the season. So it was a great division, and for Health Science to come out of it, they are definitely battle-tested. And you mentioned, playing against South Park. I think that's from what I would think, that's probably their closest to, the type of game they have to play today, playing against a crazy quarterback statistical-wise, you know what I mean? So with Willoughby's stats, that's kind of similar to Moses' stats that we're going to see today.
All right, that will do it for us. You can watch the game right now on the NFHS Network. But for Paul Catrona, Tim Chief, I'm Francis Beck. Join us at halftime, and stay tuned all weekend long for more coverage from the Far West Regionals.
What does it mean when people say America is a land of opportunity?
It means the power to discover,
to redefine yourself,
to improve yourself,
to challenge yourself,
to realize there's more in you
than you ever knew
that you could do.
It means giving people an open field to explore what they do best.
With the best tools,
the best training,
the best technology in the world.
We bring out the best in the people who serve.
So you can be all you can be.
Logistics Plus is a global transportation provider headquartered in Erie, PA, with locations worldwide, including right here in Western New York. Logistics Plus is consistently recognized as a fast-growing transportation and logistics company, great supply chain partner, top freight broker, leading project cargo manager, and a great place to work. With a strong passion for excellence, our 500-plus employees put the plus in logistics.
Or an efficient, personal approach for all of your transportation needs. More information about our Buffalo office is available at logisticsplus.com/Buffalo.